Insurance fraud in the UK has hit epidemic levels. It's costing us over £2 billion every year. That's almost £6 million every day. Deliberate crashes, bogus personal injuries, even phantom pets. The fraudsters are risking more and more to make a quick killing, and every year it's adding over £50 to your insurance bill. But insurers are fighting back, exposing 15 fake claims every hour. Armed with covert surveillance systems,
that's the subject out the vehicle,
sophisticated data analysis techniques, and a highly skilled, dedicated police unit, they're catching the criminals red-handed.
Just don't lie to us.
All those con men, scammers, and cheats on the fiddle are now caught in the act and claimed and shamed. Today, the pedestrian who forgot her Green Cross code and tried to cash in on it.
She's looked both ways? No, that's not true at all.
The police's Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department catch a suspected fraudster with his trousers down.
Well, I've no pants on. Don't need to get dressed.
And the jaw-dropping lengths that one woman went to in her bid to scam insurance companies.
In my 2.5 years in charge of IFED, this is the most despicable and shocking case I've come across by some distance.
Nowadays, we're bombarded by adverts from claims management companies telling us that we could be owed a small fortune in the event of an accident. This has led to a boom in claims for personal injuries, and while many of these are legitimate, some are not.
I think that some people are under the misguided conception that wherever there's an incident, then there is a claim to be made. That's not true at all. In order to be successful in a claim in this country, you've got to prove that someone was negligent.
But proving negligence isn't as easy as some people think, and public transport operator First Group find themselves battling dubious claims on a weekly basis. One particular incident which raised such a claim occurred on a busy bus route in central London.
We have a woman alleging that she's looked left, she's looked right, she's seen no traffic coming, so she's assumed it's safe to cross. She stepped out and the bus has hit her.
A pedestrian versus a bus is only ever going to have one winner. Now, as any youngster with good road sense will tell you, before crossing the road, it's vital that you stop, look both ways, listen and look again. And although the pedestrian in this case claims she did exactly that, First Group weren't so sure.
The one thing that would suggest that's not true is if you look right, you would see a 15-ton bus coming towards you, and you should be able to therefore stop and not get run over.
Historically, cases like this will be one person's word against another. But thanks to modern technology, it's becoming easier to find out what really happened.
She's given her version of events, the driver will give his version of events. The one factual piece of evidence we have is the CCTV footage itself. The camera doesn't lie, it shows a true picture of what actually happened, and it's an invaluable source of evidence.
Most buses have at least 10 CCTV cameras, and although they're primarily used for passenger and driver safety, they can also be very handy when it comes to settling claims like this.
When we've looked at the CCTV footage, we're expecting to see a woman stepping out from between two vehicles, having looked both ways, and stepping out just not having seen the bus for some reason.
It sounds reasonable enough, but is it what really happened?
You'll see the lady suddenly appear from between the two vehicles. She doesn't look, she just looks left, steps out. There's no attempt to look right.
The woman steps out between a stationary sightseeing bus and a trailer. The double-decker is so large she can't see the other bus coming her way. And to make matters worse, she doesn't even look.
If you're going to step out from between two vehicles, your view's going to be very poor. You need to make sure that you can see what's coming before you step out.
The driver has no time to react, and as quick as he's on the brakes, the woman is hit by the front corner of the bus, throwing her up in the air.
There is no way he's going to avoid hitting her when she steps out when the bus is that close, and the footage shows exactly that.
From the driver's perspective, it looks like a devastating blow, but the multiple cameras positioned at various points on the bus give a clear picture of exactly how severe the collision was and what happened next.
You can see the force of the impact has driven her to the ground and she's rolled underneath the flatbed truck, but she's out and up pretty quickly.
As severe as the impact looked, thankfully the woman wasn't seriously hurt. But it wasn't long before First Group received a claim for her injuries.
The injuries that were subsequently claimed for compensation from us were probably more to do with her hitting the ground than actually the impact with the bus itself. She's got some minor cuts and bruises, the ever-present whiplash claim. She's got a main injury to her knee, which has necessitated her having to use crutches for up to 6 weeks. Some 9 months after the accident, she's still alleged to be suffering from her injuries.
Incidents like this are nothing new, and First Group find themselves dealing with claims like this on a weekly basis.
In light of the advertising that goes on today, and it's made quite clear how much you can get from a simple slip or a trip or a fall at work, it's probably reasonable to assume that this lady may have assumed she can get £3,000 to £3,500 for this accident. So you could argue, why wouldn't she put a claim in? I would say because it's an out-and-out lie, to be honest, but that's just my opinion.
It may sound harsh, but it's important to remember that the woman alleged to have looked both ways and is claiming that any negligence lies with the driver. Such allegations mean that in cases like this, it isn't just the injured parties who can be the victims.
What happens to the drivers that are confronted with these things on a daily basis? I watched the CCTV footage back on this one. You can see the horror and the general anguish in the driver's face. He just looks horrified that this has happened. And these sorts of things, when drivers are confronted with these sorts of situations, this wasn't even a serious injury. Had it been more serious, some of the drivers can walk away with serious emotional scars. It can affect their confidence, the way they drive, and yeah, it can have a big knock-on effect.
Although this case was a genuine accident, the woman tried to exaggerate her claim. But there are some people out there who will create an accident with the sole purpose of cashing in. Someone who has first-hand experience of this despicable crime is bus driver Maxine Wilde, who found herself at the centre of a number of fraudulent claims after a motorist deliberately collided with her bus.
I love my job. I really do, and I want to keep on doing it. But when this incident happened, I thought, that's it. I finally found my dream job after 30 years of looking, and it's going to be taken away from me. I was a little bit unsure of whether I'd still have a job at the end of it all. They think it's victimless, but it isn't. They don't care if I'm unemployed. They don't care if I have sleepless nights.
Thanks to CCTV footage, Maxine's case was thrown out. But what about our pedestrian who appeared to forget her Green Cross code and then exaggerated her claim? Armed with video evidence of the whole incident, First Group felt they had a watertight case against the woman's claims.
Upon reviewing the CCTV footage in this particular case, we've then revisited the lady's statement. She's trying to cross the road, that's true. She's been hit by a bus, this is also true. She's looked both ways? No, that's not true at all, and the footage clearly shows she hasn't, so we've gone back to her solicitors and we've said the statement given by your client just doesn't match up with what's on the CCTV footage. Here's a copy, tell us what you think. We haven't heard since.
Given the video evidence, it's hardly surprising that this case has stalled. And Lee is keen to point out that injured parties are only entitled to compensation when they are not at fault.
The customer care side of First Group, which I'm involved in, very much just want to deal with the genuine claims as quickly as possible and for the right amount, and that's what we're really there for. When we have incidents like this, it slows procedures down because we have to investigate claims that are not genuine. Her statement was not true, and although I feel very sorry for anyone that's been hit by a bus, regardless of how it's happened, it doesn't mean that we're just going to keel over and pay every single claim, because we can only really pay cases where we are negligent, and in this case, it's just not.
So if there's a lesson to be learned from a case like this, it's that when there's no blame, there's no claim. Still to come, an insurance company turns the tables and reclaims what's rightfully theirs.
He's got no idea that we're coming to recover the vehicle today. which is our weapon, if you like, the element of surprise.
And one of the most shocking cases that IFED has ever dealt with.
And it was one fraud after another fraud after another fraud.
When insurance fraud hit an all-time high, the City of London Police decided that enough was enough and formed a specialist unit with the sole aim of tackling the fraudsters head-on.
IFED is a dedicated team that deals with insurance fraud. Whatever insurance policy there is out there, we investigate it.
Police, don't move, stay where you are!
It's 6:45 a.m. and this team of IFED officers are heading up north to investigate a suspected case of car insurance fraud. Aman Taylor is heading up the operation.
We're hoping to find any computer equipment or any genuine documentation which we can use as evidence later once we get to the interview stage. It's going to be slightly more difficult than dealing with a standard case. He's gone to lengths to cover up his tracks.
Every raid has its own risks and obstacles, and today is no exception.
The property itself we've looked at from research, and we believe to be large enough, a big enough property that it's going to take a few of us to secure the property. That's why we've got uniform attended to assist us with securing the property and securing a person once we arrive there.
When the team arrive at the location, the property is so large that a man does a quick recce to find the front door.
I think it's maybe the property. I'm just going to have a quick look up at that driveway.
As the building is unlit and pretty large, it takes the team a few moments to work out the layout.
Pardon? Ah.
But nothing deters the IFED team, and soon they're at the front door, ready to give their suspect an early morning wake-up.
Hello, you Mr.
Yeah.
We have a warrant to search the premises.
The team are in, although unsurprisingly, not everyone is particularly pleased to see them.
Oh dearie me, I can't believe this. I've never had out like this in my bloody life.
After a dressing down by a surprised family member, a man arrests the suspect and explains the implications this will have on his privacy.
Do you want me to get dressed?
Yeah, what I will do is, because you're under arrest, what I'll ask is that one of the uniform officer will stay with you just while you get dressed. He's going
I've no pants on. So
yeah, I know, he's not going to stand there and watch or anything like that, but he's got to be with you whilst you're under arrest because you're under arrest.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll go get dressed.
Once arrested, you are never out of sight of the police officers, regardless of what you are or are not wearing. And it's not uncommon for suspects to try and destroy incriminating evidence. Meanwhile, DI Dom Parkin explains to the suspect's family that their cooperation could make the process a lot easier.
Rather than us searching the house from top to bottom, we could say to him, we are here to search for documentation for the insurance claim.
Yeah.
If you want to show us the drawer where it is,
Right,
and we're satisfied that that's what we need, then that may conclude our search. But if he says, search the house, then we'll search the house.
Right, okay.
We'll be over that forklift thing.
Keen not to have the entire house searched, the suspect agrees to show a man and the team where he keeps the documentation that they're after.
Do you want me to go get it for you? Do you want me to come with you?
Yeah, if you can show us where we're going. Is it within this house?
No, it's outside. There's nothing in this house.
Alright, we'll come with you to the office and you can show us to the offices.
The suspect is giving his full cooperation and is claiming to have all of the information a man needs in one briefcase. But of course, IFED never take what suspects say at face value, and there's absolutely zero chance of them leaving it at that.
So everything business related would be in this office, and that is your work computer.
Yeah, if you want to take the work computer, that's fine. Yeah, you'll just crack on and see what you want.
So far, we've located our subject, so we'll be looking at completing our search, seizing what we need to seize, and then taking it for him to be interviewed. I'll put that down as 8002.
To be sure of building the strongest case possible, the team are seizing anything that could provide the evidence they need.
We'll take this, and then there's a possibility that we might even have a trace of him producing a document on Word.
But computers and laptops aren't the only things that can leave an incriminating trail.
What we can do with the phones is we can download the data from them, and we can get any text message, phone calls, anything like that that's relevant from the phones themselves.
Before leaving, the office is given a final sweep for any more evidence that might help secure a conviction.
Well, it's daylight. Dark day.
Several hours after arriving, the search is complete. But for a man and his team, this is just the beginning. The good news, though, is that things are looking promising.
Now, our intention is to go back to the police station, refer back to the exhibits that we've seized, and we can then use them for interview once we've got him back at the police station.
As anyone who drives a car knows, being without it can be a real pain in the neck. So in the event of a crash, a complimentary hire car can be a real lifesaver. And thanks to legislation, it's something that insurance policyholders can take advantage of.
The credit hire industry works in that if somebody has an accident in a car and it's not their fault, they're entitled in law to a replacement like-for-like car. So if, for example, you have an estate car where you need to put a dog in the back, a pet or a pushchair, you're entitled to a replacement like-for-like car.
Sounds great, doesn't it? But of course, the idea of a free set of wheels also appeals to fraudsters. After all, why pay for your own when you can use someone else's? To combat this threat, insurance companies have dedicated teams tasked with keeping a watchful eye on their hire cars. Neil Thomas heads up the Asset Protection Unit at Accident Exchange.
We have about 3,000 vehicles, mainly prestige vehicles. So our responsibility is to make sure those vehicles, when they're out on hire, are fully protected, are being used effectively, they're not getting involved in things we don't want to get involved in. So we're really in charge of making sure the assets are safe and make sure people don't disappear with very valuable cars.
Sadly, sometimes cars do go missing, which is exactly what happened when one of Accident Exchange's customers submitted a claim for crash damage to his pride and joy.
We replaced his car, which is an Aston Martin, with one of our Bentley cars, which is a Bentley GT Continental, which is around the same value.
So far, so good. But when Accident Exchange began to investigate the claim, they soon discovered something a little odd.
The collision was between an Aston Martin and a third-party vehicle. Our inquiries revealed that the client owned both vehicles, so it's potentially a staged accident. This aroused our suspicion to say it's probably a fraudulent claim.
An investigation revealed the accident had been staged. But strangely enough, it was at this time that the policyholder went off the radar. After several months of unsuccessfully trying to contact him, the Asset Protection Unit resorted to what's known in the trade as a snatchback.
Doing a snatchback, so getting the car back from the client, is the last resort for us.
As the name suggests, a snatchback is where the rightful owners of the vehicle use a spare set of keys to take it back. But doing so can be a risky business.
It was a rural location, so out in the country, a nice house. We went quite early in the morning, which is probably the best time to go. The interesting thing for our guys that turned up was there was a rather large Rottweiler and it was all fenced off, so we couldn't actually gain access to the property. But the Rottweiler certainly woke us up that time in the morning.
The guard dog may have added a bit of bite to proceedings, but it didn't stop the team from reclaiming the Bentley.
This particular case went to court because we could prove that it was a staged accident. The guy that owned the Aston Martin had breached the terms of his condition, the contract, so we needed to take him to court to recover our costs.
For his troubles, the policyholder was ordered to repay costs totalling £50,000. But cases like this are becoming increasingly common, and today the Asset Protection Unit are on their way to carry out another snatchback. It's early morning, and Ian and Tony are a long way from home. They've been on the road for almost 4 hours, but are now just minutes away from the location.
He's got no idea that we're coming to recover the vehicle today, which is our weapon, if you like, the element of surprise.
They might be the rightful owners, but snatching cars can still be a hazardous business.
Our main concern is to, at all costs, avoid confrontation. You can never account for what may happen once you get there.
But an irate customer isn't the only thing the guys need to worry about.
In the past, it has happened that although the client has obtained the vehicle fraudulently, he will report it stolen. And there have been instances in the past where we've actually been pulled up by the police and they've thought that we've actually stolen the vehicle, when in actual fact we're the lawful owners and we're just recovering our property.
To avoid any confusion today, Ian and Tony have alerted the local police about what they're doing.
The vehicle should be up here somewhere. We just start having to look and identify if we can see any grey Vauxhall insignias.
Quite closely parked together, aren't they? I hope I can get it out if he's here. Yeah, what's this here? That's it?
That's it.
Right.
Having found the car, Ian has to act quickly. There's no room for error. And now definitely isn't the time for stalling it. The guys are safely away.
We've got the vehicle. It appears undamaged at the moment.
Ian and Tony pull into a garage to give the car a quick once-over and check there isn't anything illegal on board.
There's a lot of property in there, isn't there?
Apart from a load of junk on the back seat, the car appears to be okay.
Our priority now is to get the vehicle back to Birmingham as soon as possible. We'll try and make contact with the client just to let him know that we have recovered the vehicle and we're sending his property back to him. I'm sure it won't be the last one that we'll be doing, but yeah, a very successful mission.
Just 2 weeks after its inception, IFED dealt with a case that would eventually highlight the shocking depths that some fraudsters would sink to. The initial report was of a young woman called Emma Fisher, who was suspected of submitting fraudulent insurance claims. DC Alex Cooley headed up the investigation.
We went up to Walsall and Emma Fisher was arrested in relation to 7 fake household contents insurance claims. Time and time again, she was claiming for the same items. But she told us at that stage that the frauds were limited to a total of 7.
Even after 2 years of operations and 450 arrests, head of IFED David Wood can still clearly remember the sequence of events that surrounded Emma Fisher.
We hoped that encounter with the police and with IFED would be her one and only dealings with us.
Will that be long enough?
We were sadly mistaken.
3 months later, IFED were dealing with a number of suspected fraudulent claims when they noticed a familiar name on the case notes.
This time, we could see the extent of her offending. It was over a long period of time, was quite systematic and well thought out. It was different to the offending we'd seen before.
It was clear that IFED were dealing with a serial fraudster. But what was disturbing were the lengths that Emma Fisher was prepared to go to in the hope of cashing in. For starters, there were multiple claims on pet insurance policies, some of which were for dogs that didn't even exist.
Emma Fisher was typically claiming that she had purchased a new Chihuahua and that Chihuahua had subsequently either been stolen or it had gone astray. She would substantiate that with emails pretending to be a pet breeder to prove the original purchase of the dogs. She was quite imaginative. The claim was generally for the entire price of a replacement dog.
But IFED soon discovered that claiming on phantom pooches was just the tip of the iceberg. Because when it came to Emma Fisher and fake claims, no insurer was safe.
She moved into mobile phone insurance, where she claimed that she was mugged and that she'd lost a mobile phone. She pretended that she had been defrauded on her bank account, typically claiming that, again, she'd been robbed and that her card had been misused. She also got involved in a couple of more specialist lines of insurance, including, for example, income protection insurance, so where she claimed that she'd had a job, which was a lie, and that she had subsequently been made unemployed and she was claiming for an indemnity to cover her lost earnings.
Defrauding insurance companies for a bit of cash with phantom pets and made-up muggings is one thing, But IFED's investigation soon highlighted that Emma Fisher was anything but an average fraudster. In fact, she had even used false claims to bag herself a house adapted for a disabled person. That's right, a house.
In order to obtain the disabled adapted house, Emma Fisher sent an email to the Housing Authority pretending to be a doctor. The doctor had the fake name of Mr. Ahmed. Mr. Ahmed, in this supposed email, was saying how Emma Fisher was suffering from terminal cancer and needed use of a wheelchair. And in the same claim, Emma Fisher also pretended to be a social worker and emailed claiming that Emma Fisher had been the victim of domestic violence.
With no moral scruples, Emma Fisher even claimed she had cancer. In fact, there were no depths that she wouldn't stoop to.
Not only did she get the disabled adapted house under false pretences, but within the first couple of weeks of her tenancy, she made a false public liability claim against the housing group. And what she did was she pretended that she'd fallen over some debris in the garden, which she'd alleged had been left by the Housing Authority. In fact, on that occasion, she had taken an image of a bruised leg from Google and submitted it as evidence of her own false injury. And as part of that claim, Emma Fisher alleged that she'd suffered a miscarriage as a result of the fall, which was extremely serious, and again turned out to be totally untrue. It became clear just how manipulative Emma Fisher was prepared to be. Obviously meant that in my investigation I had to take everything she told me with a very large degree of caution.
To you and me, that's a very large pinch of salt. After further investigation, IFED had quite a dossier on Emma Fisher, and the findings were staggering to say the least.
Our investigation revealed that over a period of almost 4 years, Emma Fisher had submitted 65 fraudulent insurance claims.
Incredibly, during that time, Emma Fisher only got away with £8,500. But it was the incredible lies she told that made her case stand out.
In my 2.5 years in charge of IFED, this is the most despicable and shocking case I've come across by some distance. We've not encountered this before, that someone would pretend they've got a terminal illness, would pretend they've been the victim of domestic violence, or would pretend that they're actually had a miscarriage. But Emma Fisher did each of those 3 things.
It was clear to me on listening to the phone recordings of her deception and to reading the various emails that she'd sent that she seemed to be fully immersed in the roles that she was assuming. She was almost like a method actor. I think she could be quite convincing.
But Emma Fisher had given her final performance. In July 2012, she was arrested by IFED detectives and charged with 22 counts of fraud. When she appeared at Wolverhampton Crown Court, she received a 22-month prison sentence.
I believe Emma Fisher's crime spree had developed almost into a habit, and she effectively couldn't stop herself. And it was one fraud after another fraud after another fraud.
Insurance fraud in the UK has hit epidemic levels. It's costing us over £2 billion every year. That's almost £6 million every day. Deliberate crashes, bogus personal injuries, even phantom pets. The fraudsters are risking more and more to make a quick killing, and every year it's adding over £50 to your insurance bill. But insurers are fighting back, exposing 15 fake claims every hour. Armed with covert surveillance systems,
that's a subject out the vehicle,
sophisticated data analysis techniques, and a highly skilled dedicated police unit. They're catching the criminals red-handed.
Just don't lie to us.
All those con men, scammers, and cheats on the fiddle are now caught in the act and claimed and shamed. Coming up, surveillance footage scuppers and HGV drivers claim for a truckload of compensation.
Without the surveillance, we would have faced a claim into the many hundreds of thousands of pounds, and so it would have provided Mr. Doyle with a lottery win in compensation.
A bone-crunching fall.
You can feel every single hit as he's falling down the stairs. It was pretty harrowing to watch.
And door-to-door inquiries, IFED style.
It's police, could you open up? We will put the door in.
When it comes to catching someone out, there's nothing like a bit of damning video evidence, which is exactly what proved to be the undoing of HGV driver Lee Doyle after he grossly exaggerated a personal injury claim.
Mr. Doyle alleged that his accident happened when he was walking across his employer's yard and tripped over and fell and banged his lower back on a raised curbstone.
Injuries to the spine can be very serious and in severe cases can leave victims with numerous ongoing problems. When the insurance company received Lee Doyle's claim, it appeared that he was suffering from every back complaint in the book.
The injuries that he was left with was a very stiff lower back. He had sciatic type symptoms with dead legs that meant he couldn't walk very far. Whenever he did walk, he had to use a walking stick that he couldn't bend or lift or carry. And in particular, he couldn't sit still for very long periods, which obviously affected his job as an HGV driver.
With a list of complaints as long as that, you'd think that the doctor would be able to diagnose the problem in a heartbeat. But the specialist who examined Mr. Doyle was left scratching his head.
Unfortunately for Mr. Doyle, the orthopaedic surgeon couldn't find any reason for the nature of the injuries that he said he was suffering from. And because of that, he suggested referral on to a pain management consultant.
Unsurprisingly, the combination of Lee Doyle's supposed symptoms and an orthopaedic consultant that couldn't find anything wrong with him led the insurance company to suspect foul play. So they referred the case to their solicitors, BLM.
We had real concerns about Mr. Doyle's claim simply because it didn't add up. Somebody who'd had such a very straightforward accident of tripping and falling, Mr. Doyle said that he was significantly disabled. For example, he couldn't walk more than 25 yards. He needed a walking stick to get about. And when his own expert couldn't find an explanation for the symptoms he was describing, we thought it merited further investigation.
With Lee Doyle claiming his injuries were so severe he could no longer continue working as a lorry driver, he wanted his employer's insurers to cough up some cash.
He'd calculated his loss of earnings at £55,000. There were other incidental losses, additional help that he'd had around the home for DIY and gardening. The important factor for us was that Mr. Doyle said he would find it impossible to go back to his earlier job. And so his future loss of earnings could well have been into the hundreds of thousands of pounds.
But his claim for lost income was just the beginning, as Lee Doyle had a list of costs that was even longer than his string of injuries, taking the total claim to around £500,000.
He also claimed for travel expenses to various medical appointments and strangely even to his nan's house because he said that he couldn't shower at home, so had to go to her house to shower. He claimed for the additional care and assistance that his partner had provided him in getting him up out of bed in the morning and helping him dress in the morning. He'd claimed for additional help that he'd had looking after his fish. Mr. Doyle's case was rather extreme in that there were some very strange items of claim.
Faced with a potentially huge payout, but still not convinced that this was a legitimate claim, BLM arranged for Mr. Doyle to see a pain management consultant and a neurologist. But that's not all they did.
Because of the concerns that we had about the claim generally, we arranged for covert surveillance to be undertaken. The difficulty with that is that sometimes the surveillance operatives can be sitting there and not see anything at all. And so, because we'd arranged medical appointments, we knew where Mr. Doyle would be on a particular day at a particular time.
With the injuries that Lee Doyle was claiming to be suffering from, BLM were expecting the footage to show a man unsteady on his feet and who needed help to perform even the most basic movements. And as he arrived for and left his medical appointments, that's precisely what they did see. Case closed? Not quite.
Some of the surveillance we obtained of Mr. Doyle, you wouldn't believe that it was the same person that you read about in the medical reports. We're able to watch him going into a medical assessment, walking in a very disabled manner with a walking stick, presenting himself in chronic pain. When we eventually got the medical report back, he had told the expert that he had quite serious physical difficulties. What we saw Mr. Doyle do later in the day was simply amazing. What he'd said on paper, where he couldn't walk for more than 25 yards without a walking stick, we were able to disprove that, showing that he was walking his dog without any difficulty for over an hour. He said that he couldn't bend at the waist and lift things off the floor, but surveillance footage showed that he was lifting without any real difficulty at all.
But the most shocking footage was captured just 4 hours after Doyle had hobbled his way into a medical examination. In it, we see him hoisting heavy concrete slabs above his head onto a garage roof. Steady on now, Lee. Mind your back, son.
His evidence was that he couldn't drive, yet he was able to drive his own 4x4 vehicle without any apparent discomfort at all. So everything that we were being told simply wasn't borne out by the surveillance footage that we were presented with.
The video evidence proved beyond doubt that Lee Doyle was grossly over-exaggerating his claim, happy to play the role of the weak and wounded in order to receive a bumper payout. But it was a performance that BLM weren't buying.
Once we had collated all of the surveillance evidence and we'd had the opportunity of having Mr. Doyle examined by our experts, we were waiting for court proceedings to be issued. That was really the last chance that Mr. Doyle had to come clean. We didn't know whether he would be honest in his presentation and say that he has tried to work, that he does have good days or bad days, that he is capable of doing some physical activity. When proceedings were eventually issued, he maintained that he was chronically disabled, that he hadn't worked since the date of the accident. It was unlikely he was ever going to be able to go back to his former job. And the claim that he presented in financial terms was very significant, into the hundreds of thousands of pounds. Our only response to that had to be that we disclosed all of our medical evidence and all of our surveillance evidence and pointed out that he'd been caught out.
Since his accident, Mr. Doyle had claimed around £25,000 in disability benefits. So, upon hearing about the exaggeration of his claim, the Department of Work and Pensions had a few questions of their own.
A separate investigation was undertaken by the Department for Work and Pensions through their fraud unit. We understand that Mr. Doyle's benefits were stopped immediately when the investigation was started.
Doyle was ordered to repay almost £25,000, but bogus disability benefits weren't the only thing he had taken away from him.
We understand that he tried to tender his resignation. We were informed by the employer that his resignation wasn't accepted, and so we understand that a process of gross misconduct was pursued and that eventually Mr. Doyle was dismissed.
BLM's investigations had scuppered what could have been a fraudulent claim in the region of £500,000.
Without the surveillance, we think we would have faced a claim into the many hundreds of thousands of pounds, and so it would have provided Mr. Doyle with a lottery win in compensation.
Instead, Lee Doyle was offered and accepted a £10,000 settlement, which is what BLM felt was the honest portion of his claim. But that didn't even cover all of his legal costs. He was now out of pocket and unemployed. However, if this case had been resolved just a year later, then things could have ended much more seriously.
I think Mr. Doyle is a very fortunate man for getting the level of compensation that we offered. Times have changed, thankfully, since Mr. Doyle put his claim in, and the way of the law now, we wouldn't actually be making any offers at all. In fact, we'd be looking to pursue Mr. Doyle for contempt of court, and which may lead to a prison term.
Still to come, a nasty tumble, but did he slip or did he trip?
Obviously, it's very sad when someone gets hurt, but is he entitled to make a claim?
And IFED treat another suspected fraudster to one of their special wake-up calls.
Police, open up! What they're going to do is they're going to come round with the entry team and gain entry that way. Not the way we like to do it, but it's leaving us no option.
In January 2012, the police joined the fight against insurance fraud by forming an elite squad known as IFED, the Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department.
IFED is a dedicated team that deals with insurance fraud. Whatever insurance policy there is out there, we investigate it.
There is a dedicated 40-strong unit that work 24/7 hunting down insurance fraudsters.
IFED has made over 450 arrests and saved millions of pounds in fraudulent insurance claims, Money which ultimately goes back in our pockets. From now on, fraudsters need to watch their backs.
We are out there in numbers. You might get a nasty knock on your door in the morning if you commit this type of fraud.
With almost £400 million a year being lost through car insurance fraud, it's something that the officers of IFED have found themselves dealing with on a regular basis. And one of the biggest problems they encounter are crashes that have been instigated with the sole intention of making money.
Crash for cash involves staged or induced accidents. It's generally organised by people that know each other, and a typical example would be what's known as a slam-on, where a vehicle will slam its brakes on with the sole purpose of causing the vehicle behind to drive into it and then make a claim as a result of that accident.
During their first year of operation, IFED dealt with a crash for cash case, which hit the headlines.
This case involves two families from the Birkenhead area in Liverpool who reported that they're involved in a road accident in the Wirral area in March 2011.
It all seems fairly standard so far. So what was the problem?
The claim involved a road accident at a set of traffic lights where a BMW and a Rover was said to be in a collision. Within these two vehicles were 7 occupants that belonged to 2 separate families. And as a result of the accident, all members then submitted claims for personal injury, damage to the vehicles and vehicle recovery costs. And all told, those claims totalled £77,000.
At first glance, this was a classic shunt between 2 cars at the lights. But as the insurance company began to process the claims, it became clear that this was anything but an ordinary accident.
It wasn't so much the value of the claim that raised the alarm, it was the inconsistency in some of the detail provided by the claimants to the insurers that caused them to make a referral to IFED for further investigation.
By the time the case was handed over to IFED, forensic engineers had established that the damage to the cars didn't match up to the version of events on the claim form. And as if that wasn't dodgy enough, the insurance company had also discovered that members of the 2 families already knew each other and were friends on a social networking site.
This was clearly pre-planned and organised on a large scale. The value of the claims is £77,000, so that shows the level of planning and work that went into this crime.
After some investigations of their own, it wasn't long before IFED made their move.
IFED sent a team of detectives up to the Birkenhead area and effected the arrest of all 7 suspects. They were all charged and sent to court, where they were convicted of fraud offences. So the main offenders, Kenneth Nash and Darren Gallimore, both received custodial sentences 12 months each in prison.
Nash, Gallimore and their accomplices thought they could pull the wool over the insurance company's eyes and pocket a small fortune in the process. But they were sorely mistaken.
It should send out the message: if you don't want to get arrested, if you don't want to go to prison, if you don't want to get a criminal record, then don't commit insurance fraud.
Crash for cash doesn't just affect insurance companies though. One tactic that fraudsters use is to hire cars, crash them, and then cash in on personal injury claims. Someone who knows all too well what impact this type of crime can have is Tony Moore, who owns and runs a car rental company.
The effect on these cash for crash accidents to our company from a financial point of view are immense. Obviously, it just pumps up the insurance. Pumping up insurance means we have to put our prices up, which obviously affects our business. 2 years ago, we have over £200,000 worth of claims. That obviously has a knock-on effect on our premium the following year. It's immense.
Tony has first-hand experience of how a scam like Crash for Cash can hit a business's books. But as an employer, he also knows there's a greater cost to these crimes.
Additionally to that, if ever the insurance companies turn around and said, look, you know, we're not insuring you, then we shut the doors and we all go home, and I've got 46 people made redundant, all caused by somebody trying to rip you off cash for crash.
For now, Tony's business is managing to survive, but the threat of Crash for Cash is a serious concern.
It's not, as people think, a victimless, it's just money. It isn't money, it's people's lives.
With the likes of IFED clamping down and fighting back against those who see car insurance as a way to make a fast buck, Tony has some words of warning.
The message to those people out there that want to do this is, if we get a sniff of it, we'll go all the way to try and prove it. And if we prove it, we won't just say, no, we're not paying you. We will push and push and push for a prosecution. And the courts are starting to take it serious now, and we're talking now incarceration.
As Tony rightly says, this is now a crime with serious consequences. The good news is that the likes of you and I are starting to benefit from the work of units like IFED, because in 2013, the money saved from crash for cash scams reduced car insurance premiums by 12%. Although as far as IFED's concerned, they're only just getting started.
The Insurance Fraud Bureau estimates that the cost to the insurance industry is £392 million per year from crash for cash scams. So I mean, that's clearly a huge amount of money, and it is an area that we're putting a lot of resources into to tackling. And I'd like to think that with the results that we're getting and the impact we're making, that we're well on the way to targeting this type of criminality, and in the future I'd like to think it will drop.
Just like lightning, you never know when disaster might strike. But thanks to the boom of personal injury claims, some accidents can have a silver lining in the form of a cash payout. In 2013, public transport operator First Group dealt with a claim from a gentleman who was making his way down the stairs at one of their train stations, when suddenly everything went horribly wrong.
When you come across claims like this, the first thing you normally think of when you see the injury is that's going to hurt, and seeing the footage just hammers that home. It's never nice to see anyone get injured in any way, and although you don't know what injuries he sustained, you can feel every single hit as he's falling down the stairs. It's not nice, and I do feel sorry for the gentleman concerned.
Thankfully, there were a number of people on hand to help the man out, although it was later discovered that the fall was every bit as bad as it looked.
The injuries sustained were quite nasty. He's got some minor bruising, but his main injury is actually a fracture to his knee, and that has got to hurt. It goes into the knee joint. It's very painful to walk on after, but at the time, yeah, he must have been in excruciating pain.
Even though it was a genuine accident, it wasn't long before First Group received a claim from the man's solicitors.
This gentleman alleged that he'd slipped when he'd got to the halfway point coming down the stairs. People don't just tend to slip on nothing, so he's assuming that therefore it was our fault and we caused him to fall down the stairs, therefore he's entitled to compensation for his rather nasty injuries.
If First Group were at fault, then the kind of payout that the man could have been looking at for injuries as severe as this certainly wasn't an amount to be sniffed at.
Overall, this claim was probably worth in the region of £50,000 for his compensation for his injuries, any potential loss of earnings claim and the legal fees that would have ensued.
So, we have an accident that definitely happened, serious injuries that were sustained, and a claim for around £50,000 compensation. It all sounds fairly standard, but before companies like First Group get out the checkbook, they want to be certain that the blame lies with them first. And that's where CCTV can be an invaluable source of evidence.
I actually don't think that people realise just how much CCTV footage there is at a railway station, and they give very good coverage of the area. People just don't even know they're there.
In this case, there was a CCTV camera in prime position at the top of the stairs, so First Group had a bird's eye view of exactly what happened.
When we receive claims like this, what we're going to look at when we view the footage is, did anyone else have a particular problem walking along that passage of stairways? What ideally you're looking for is people walking down with no problems at all, which would suggest there wasn't a slip hazard, because we just don't know what this gentleman had slipped on.
But when First Group viewed the footage, there didn't appear to be any evidence of a slipping hazard, or indeed any hazard at all.
One of the key points you'll notice from the actual CCTV evidence is the small child actually joyfully skipping down the stairs with no real problems at all, even stepping on the section where the gentleman alleges he slipped. Why then is this chap alleging that he slipped on a step that was previously okay for the people that preceded him? It's clear there was no slipping hazard on those steps. Otherwise, that small child who had taken a jump at it would have gone flying.
So, if the man hadn't slipped like he claimed, then what really did happen?
He puts his left foot down, plants that quite normally. As he goes to step forward with his right foot, it gives way beneath him. This then causes him to stumble forward. At the same time, an unfortunate series of events, his trailing foot then catches the bag he's carrying, which flips him over, and he virtually somersaults down the stairs, striking probably every single step on the way down. And when I watched the footage, I did actually say ouch to myself every time he hit a step. It was, yeah, pretty harrowing to watch.
The severity of the fall had never been in doubt, but with no evidence to suggest that any blame lay with First Group, they didn't feel that the man was entitled to any compensation.
Once we reviewed the footage and realised that what the gentleman was saying was not actually true, we sent off the details of the CCTV to his solicitors and told them that we just weren't going to pay this claim out. They've subsequently closed their file and we've not heard from them since.
Were it not for the CCTV footage, this chap could have walked, or rather limped, all the way to the bank by claiming there was a slipping hazard that never existed. But situations like this are nothing new, and companies like First Group are finding themselves dealing with more and more people looking to pocket some easy money.
I think the practice from a legal point of view has become so easy to put a claim in on behalf of a person on the off chance that they will receive a payout does encourage some people to submit claims they otherwise wouldn't. Sometimes people know they've had an accident and it's no one's fault, but they're encouraged to try and make a claim for it anyway.
Although this case was dropped with no further action, there have been many instances where fraudulent claimers have been prosecuted and even sent to prison, which begs the question, is it really worth it?
Obviously, it's very sad when someone gets hurt, but is he entitled to make a claim? I think people are very hung up on the fact that if something happens to them, they're entitled to make a claim from someone, and accidents don't just happen. Well, they do. Not everything that happens to you, you can blame someone for. Sometimes it's just an accident.
It's early morning, and two teams of IFED officers have headed up north to carry out a dual raid in a suspected case of car insurance fraud. DC Andy Jackson is the officer in charge of one of the units.
What we plan to do today is we've got two warrants to attend simultaneously two addresses, and what they've done is they've both submitted claims for theft from their vehicles. The value of the thefts is in the region of $16,000. It's believed that they've done it on a number of occasions.
The suspected fraud is thought to have used quotes that were doctored to make them look like receipts. So IFED have got a pretty good idea what they need to find today.
We'll be looking for material which will assist the investigation. We'll be looking at probably computer evidence. If there's a suggestion that they've altered this documentation, they may very well scan that onto a computer.
Today, IFED are being assisted by local police units. So the first stop is the local station for a briefing and to get kitted up.
You just never know who you're going to be dealing with, people's reactions sometimes when they, get arrested, or police turn up at the address, people just react in different ways. So we're just going to make our way there now and see how we get on.
With everything set, the teams roll out.
Hello Mick, you all right? Look, we're literally going to be here in about a minute. Do you want us to go straight in?
Yeah, we're in now.
We'll go straight to the house. Cheers. All right, bye mate, bye.
After a final phone call with the other IFED team, Andy and the boys go in.
Hello, City Police, open up.
It's not unusual for people wanted by IFED to make a run for it. So, just in case today's suspect decides to do the old backdoor shuffle, local officers cover the exits. Although it looks as if the team may be too late.
It's police, can you open up? We will put the door in.
Word has come through that the suspect at the other raid has been arrested, but no one is able to get hold of the elusive homeowner who lives here. Although with crucial evidence to find, Andy and the team aren't leaving without it.
Right, it looks like what they're going to do is they're going to come round with the entry team and we'll gain entry that way. not the way we like to do it, but it's leaving us no option at this time. We've tried all numbers and all other means to get in touch with him, but we've been unsuccessful.
With the front door just moments away from being taken off its hinges, the suspect returns the team's phone call.
Yeah, it's DC Andy Jackson from City London Police. I understand you're on your way back to this address? Excellent, OK. All right, how far are you away? Lovely. All right, we'll see you when you get here, and we'll explain all. Thank you, bye. All right, he's on his way, he's 5 minutes away. And then someone's just pulled up.
And sure enough, just a few minutes later, IFED get their man.
You all right? What we do is we'll move the car, if you can park your van up on the drive, and then what we'll do, we'll get you to open up, we'll go in, and we'll explain all.
The cameras remain outside the property.
What I'm going to do now is I'm going to be arresting you on suspicion of fraud by false representation into those claims. All right? So for that, you do not have to say anything, but it may harm your defence if you do not mention when questioned something which you may later rely on in court. Anything you do say may be given evidence.
Although it isn't long before the suspect is brought out and taken away for questioning.
He was a bit surprised to see us here, but he's been cooperative, he's been compliant, and he's willing to assist us in our inquiries.
With the formalities out of the way, the search can begin. Almost half an hour later, Andy and the team emerge from the property, having seized a number of documents, mobile phones, and a laptop, which may contain crucial evidence.
Laptop's always handy because computers can be used to alter documentation. Documentation can be scanned into them, you know, or indeed documentation can be created on them. Due to the fact that he has had access to it, this is something that we can take back to London and review at a later date.
For Andy and the team, the work has only just begun. But after a shaky start, things are looking up.
It's been a good day in the fact that what we needed to do today has been achieved. Our objectives have been achieved. Job done.
The suspects were later interviewed under caution, and the case is still under investigation. Insurance fraud in the UK has hit epidemic levels. It's costing us over £2 billion every year. That's almost £6 million every day. Deliberate crashes, bogus personal injuries, even phantom pets. The fraudsters are risking more and more to make a quick killing, and every year it's adding over £50 to your insurance bill. But insurers are fighting back, exposing 15 fake claims every hour. Armed with covert surveillance systems,
that's the subject out the vehicle,
sophisticated data analysis techniques, and a highly skilled, dedicated police unit. They're catching the criminals red-handed.
Just don't lie to us.
All those con men, scammers, and cheats on the fiddle are now caught in the act and claimed and shamed. Coming up, motorists find their insurance policies aren't worth the paper they're written on.
I felt sick to the stomach of what could have happened, of the ifs and buts of, you know, had he had an accident, what would have happened.
The IFED team makes an unexpected discovery.
On searching one of the upstairs bedrooms, in the airing cupboard there's 5 cannabis plants being grown. Even though it's a small setup, it's a professional one.
And a dodgy life insurance claim kicks the bucket.
Are you planning to fake your own death? Don't bother.
Car insurance costs for young people have hit an all-time high, with policies that are far more expensive than the cars they cover. It's no surprise then that many young drivers feel they are being priced off the road. That's where this man, Daniel Bakari, sped to the rescue. He ran several websites that specialised in affordable insurance for young drivers. Young drivers like Ashley Whitaker, who needed to watch every penny.
My son Ashley, he was on an apprenticeship £2.50 an hour. Decided he wanted to buy a car, so saved up his own money, bought his own car, a little Peugeot 1.1, which was the cheapest thing on insurance.
With many years' experience of buying motor insurance, Ashley's dad, Nick, offered to shop around on his son's behalf. It wasn't long before he came across Aston Midshires, one of Daniel Bukhari's sites.
Aston Midshires, it was there for young drivers, people who wanted to get onto the insurance ladder. I think I spoke to the company 3 or 4 times in getting his insurance, and 3 or 4 different people answered the telephone.
It seemed like Nick had found a great deal for his son, and Ashley went ahead with the policy.
It was £500 cheaper, but it was still 2,800 and something. He had a lump sum up front, direct from his bank, of about £1,200, and then he started paying £118 a month from his bank account.
Thinking they were onto a good deal, Nick and Ashley even began recommending Aston Midshires to friends.
The point where we became suspicious of the company was in January, following the September when he took the insurance out. My son got a phone call from a friend of his who wanted to insure his car because he passed his test. He'd given him the landline number, and it was just ringing and ringing and ringing. There was nobody answering. And at that stage, I'd started to think to myself, maybe there's something not right with this.
Nick investigated further and discovered that Ashley's insurance was totally worthless.
As soon as we found out, we went straight to the bank to stop all standing orders going to this company any longer.
They didn't know it then, but Ashley had been the victim of the biggest ghost broking fraud in the UK. Ghost brokers are fraudsters who pose as agents to con people into buying insurance policies that don't exist, let alone provide any cover. Daniel Bukhari took ghost broking to the next level, setting up multiple websites and companies. DC Patrick Einsman from the City of London Police's IFED specialises in busting ghost broking gangs. He's seen firsthand how they operate.
You can be given the paperwork, you can speak to people in virtual offices, and ultimately you'll be paying for nothing and you'll be left with just a hole in your pocket.
But nothing prepared him for the scale and complexity of Bukhari's fraud.
The Aston Midshire scam had been going since September 2011, so it had been up and running 3 months by the time it got to my desk. And little did I know I was going to spend 2 years working dedicated to it.
Pat checked out the site and, just like Nick, found nothing immediately suspicious about it.
It was a very authentic website. It was on day one when I looked. It had the reviews from members of the public. It had an FCA licence number. It had everything you would need to obtain a quote. It even had a link to a virtual office where you'd call the number and you would speak to professional sounding people. That's the main thing. If you speak to someone who sounds very professional on the phone, very professional, slick operation, you're not necessarily going to be wary.
Everything seemed legitimate, even down to the high prices, which were only slightly less than the real policies. Once Pat realised the extent of the scam, he moved quickly to protect a huge number of people at risk.
There were sort of over 500 to 600 victims. We had to put a national alert out straight away just to make sure people weren't driving on the roads without insurance.
The vast numbers involved meant Pat had uncovered the UK's largest ghost broking scam. He now set his sights on the man behind it.
It took a long time to get Daniel Bukhari. He's very good at covering his tracks. A lot of phone numbers, vehicles. When you get one lucky breakthrough in a case, and we found a vehicle that was linked to him, tracked him down to the address in southwest London, and to finally arrest someone that you've been looking for over a year, it's a great feeling.
When IFED raided the property, they found themselves in the middle of a virtual fraud factory.
As we walked through the door, there were people making payments to him over the phone. They even had office noise in the background on an iPod, so that when he was speaking to customers, it would appear that he was working in a busy insurance environment. He knew I was there. The game was up.
As a result of the raid, IFED collected enough evidence to charge Bukhari. The case was brought to court and justice was served.
Daniel Bukhari was a career criminal, so he knows the risks he takes when he commits his offences. He had his lifestyle. He spent victims' monies in casinos, fast cars, lavish lifestyle.
His callous scam was hugely lucrative.
I think within a week of it being up and running, he'd made sort of 45,000, and that was only in a week.
In all, he was thought to have scammed £550,000 from the young people he targeted. For that, he was sentenced to 4.5 years. Meanwhile, his victims were left with nothing. Their hard-earned cash was gone for good.
We've not been able to reclaim 1 penny of the money.
Daniel Bakari heartlessly stole from the people who could least afford it. But what's worse for the victims and their families is the thought of what could have gone wrong.
I felt sick to the stomach of what could have happened, of the ifs and buts of, you know, had he had an accident, what would have happened.
The police and the insurance industry are determined to scare off ghost-broking fraudsters. Lindsay White of the Association of British Insurers has some advice for anyone who's concerned.
There are a number of things that someone can do if they think they've been affected by a ghost broker. They can always check with the motor insurance database, which is a list of the UK's registered, valid and genuine insurance policies.
The Motor Insurers Database allows car owners to enter their registration number free of charge to check whether their car is listed as being insured. Drivers can also protect themselves by being on the alert for ghost-broking giveaways.
They tend to use personal mobile phones on any internet advertisements. They also tend to ask people to pay upfront or in monthly instalments over the internet.
In addition, all insurers should be registered with the Financial Services Authority. The insurance industry is determined to bring ruthless ghost brokers to justice.
We take this very seriously, and anyone out there, any ghost brokers who think they can get away with this, think again.
Still to come, a woman who faked her death is discovered alive and well.
She's not dead, she was living in Hornchurch.
And a van driver finds out why you shouldn't mess with a double-decker.
Why take the chance? Buses weigh 15 tonnes. If they hit you, you're going to know about it.
The Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department, or IFED for short, is an insurance scammer's worst nightmare.
IFED is a dedicated team that deals with insurance fraud. Whatever insurance policy there is out there, we investigate it.
There is a dedicated 40-strong unit that work 24/7, hunting down insurance fraudsters.
The team was set up over 2 years ago to crack down on insurance crime in the UK.
Is there anything here that shouldn't be here that we're going to find?
In that time, it's made over 450 arrests and seen over 200 prosecutions.
If it's a fraud, it's in insurance, then it may well come to IFED's attention and IFED will take the necessary action.
Police, don't move, stay where you are!
Today, DI Dominic Parkin is on the trail of suspects believed to be connected to a potentially fraudulent road traffic accident.
We think this particular accident is a staged accident in a cash for crash type of fraud or scam.
IFED believes that both parties knew each other and deliberately staged the accident in order to claim insurance payouts. With several passengers claiming for personal injury as well as damage to the vehicles, it was estimated that the claim could run into tens of thousands of pounds.
What the insurance companies did spot is the commercial vehicle was fitted with something called telematics. And this is the vehicle fleet equivalent of a black box that's fitted in aircraft. And it showed that the commercial van, immediately prior to the accident, was circling around the area, stopping and starting.
For the raid, Dominic and his IFED team have been joined by police officers from the local force. They're on their way to arrest 2 of the suspects and collect potential evidence.
And we're going to search the houses, looking for evidence of them communicating with each other.
The operation involves a double raid, but Dominic is focusing on the 2 main suspects. The team arrive at the property. It's important for them to remain unseen until they move in to carry out the raid.
We've parked our vehicles out of sight, and let's see what happens.
The IFED team approaches the house. It's early in the morning, so the suspects should be at home.
Police, do you want to open up? Cheers.
It looks like she was just woken up.
At last, they gain access, but the film crew stay outside the property.
Morning, City London Police, Insurance Fraud Unit. Can we come in? Come on. Insurance fraud unit, we need to speak to you. Who else is in the house, please?
We've had a report from an insurance company that there's been a fraudulent claim made on a motor insurance policy involving your car. It's the accident that happened outside here. Okay, so that's why we're here. You can give us all the explanation at the station if you wish to.
Turning up early has paid off.
Good news, both people are in the house that we're after. We've woken her up. She was actually asleep in bed, so she was surprised to see us, and she's just getting dressed so that she can come back to the station.
The IFED team begins the search for potential phone and paperwork evidence. But they soon discover rather more than they bargained for.
Have a look at the airing cupboard. Is that in there? How many?
5 up there, in the airing cupboard.
When we first went in this house, we noticed there's quite a strong smell of cannabis. What I thought initially was maybe the evening before they'd had a joint, but on searching one of the upstairs bedrooms, there's an airing cupboard, and in the airing cupboard there's 5 cannabis plants being grown. And even though it's a small setup, it's a professional one. I've got some pictures here. I can see the cannabis plants being grown. There's 5 there. To get rid of the smell, there's quite a good filtration system here. There's the heat lamp above, and just here you can see the extractor pipe, which takes the strong odour out of the house. That's often the case. You'll go to find or to arrest for one thing, you discover another. But recently, we're finding these cannabis cultivation setups more commonly.
Cannabis plants like these can be worth a small fortune.
We've also found a biscuit tin. In there is small bags of cannabis and about 50 self-seal and plastic bags to put small amounts of cannabis in. We're just going to now dismantle this cultivation setup and also take the plants away as well to be examined to prove that the plants are cannabis. And that's another matter that they've been arrested for and be questioned later this morning. The local officers are going to deal with the drug offences, and the IFED officers will continue with the insurance fraud investigation.
The search continues, and it's not long before Dominic finds potential evidence.
Mobile phones have been found and seized. These will need testing to check exactly which numbers relate to those handsets.
The results of the test could show whether the mobile numbers match those of the drivers involved. One of the suspects is led out from the property and is taken to a local police station for questioning. Meanwhile, there's good news from the other location.
The other team, they've also had success. They have arrested their man, the van driver, as well. During their search, they got his phone, which will be of similar interest as it will be to this search and seizure here. So all in all, we've got everybody that we came out to find. We've got all the evidence that we came to seek. We've also dismantled this cannabis cultivation as well.
Most insurance crime is opportunistic, but some frauds are really grave. Fake deaths, for example. Life insurance fraud can potentially net several £1 million, which makes it very attractive to criminals. Fortunately, this man, John Saunders, has spent a lifetime investigating fake deaths and knows how to spot one immediately. His 25 years of experience came in handy when, in 2002, he was asked to investigate the UK's most famous case of a missing person. John Darwin went missing on a canoeing trip, but his body was never found. At the time, the story gripped the nation, and 5 years later, it made the headlines again when John Darwin sensationally returned from the dead. In 2007, he walked into a London police station and told officers he didn't remember a thing. For a while, his dramatic reappearance puzzled the nation. But this wasn't due to extreme memory loss. It was a simple case of life insurance fraud, and John Saunders had been onto him for some time.
In fact, it investigated at the time and interviewed his wife and put forward that this, in our opinion, wasn't a legitimate claim. When Darwin actually gave himself up, we actually were aware at that time that he was in Panama and were contemplating actually going to Panama and not getting the money back.
John employs Mike, a former police officer, to work on investigations with him.
I have grave concerns about what the husband's told me.
With their expertise, Linden Claims is the go-to company for insurers wishing to investigate life insurance claims featuring deaths abroad. John knows the incredible lengths people will go to cash in from beyond the grave.
He banged on the door for ages, and eventually his voice shouted out, "Go away, I'm dead." And I can remember a case in West Africa of Edward, who was allegedly dead, and I found his car, and people said he was in that house there, he'll be out in a moment. And he came out and said, "Hello, Edward, how are you?" And he said, "Well, I'm dead." I said, "You're what?" He said, "I'm dead." "Sorry, I'm not dead. My brother's dead. I'm alive." And he ran away.
In Mike's experience, there's no typical life insurance fraudster.
I don't believe that this is purely a white-collar crime. In my experience, this reaches across the social spectrum. I've had instances of people in poverty making applications, teachers making an application, and indeed businessmen.
But there is one thing all the fraudulent claimants have in common.
Money, they say, is the root of all evil, and that it's certainly opened my eyes to it since I've been working for John, in terms of that it is greed that actually pushes the people into making these claims. They see it as a way of setting themselves up, I'm sure, for life.
It's not surprising that with his line of work, John takes a dim view of those who submit phony life insurance claims.
Death comes to us all eventually, and to try and fake death, to me, seems also morally wrong.
Recently, John was asked to look at the case of a woman called Shamshad Bila, who had taken out 3 life insurance policies worth a total of £2 million. Shortly after, Miss Bila had travelled to Pakistan on holiday. After just a week, she died, apparently of dehydration. With 3 policies, £2 million of cover and a suspicious death, John was called in.
The case came to us to make a few background inquiries, to interview the claimant and ascertain all the facts, and with a view to determining whether the claim was genuine or not.
The beneficiary of the policies was Mohammed Ali Butt, Shamshad Bila's fiancé. If the claim was genuine, he stood to gain a cool £2 million. The relationship between the deceased woman and her fiancé was the key to the case, and that's where John focused his attention.
The deceased lady, Shamshad Bila, was said to be a partner in an off-licence, and she wanted to leave the policy in trust for her fiancé, Mohammed Ali Butt, who was her partner in the off-licence. But he apparently wasn't to know, and it did seem a bit strange.
John decided to take a closer look at the off-licence and ran a check to see who officially owned it.
It was in the name of Shamshad Bila and Mohammed Ali Butt, and I traced their address to actually in Ilford, and according to the neighbours there, they'd moved, but Mohammed Ali Butt had an off-licence with his wife, who was called Rosina Butt.
It didn't add up. John's investigation had revealed that the beneficiary was married to someone else. Mohammed Ali Butt was due to receive £2 million from Shamshad Bila, who had died in Pakistan. But he was married to Rosina Butt, who was very much alive. John then turned to the wife, Rosina Butt. He soon made a discovery that potentially left the claim dead in the water.
Mohammed Ali Butt's wife, Rosina, also used the name Shamshad Bila and worked at the off-licence with him.
It was too much of a coincidence, and John was convinced that Mrs. Butt and Ms. Bila were one and the same person. But it was vital to back up his suspicions with hard facts.
I managed to get the original birth certificate, and I was able to establish that she was born Shamshad Bila, and her name was changed to Rosina Bila when she was a young child. Later became Butt when she married Mr. Butt.
The Butts had used Rosina's old identity to take out multiple life insurance policies. They then claimed that Shamshad Bila had died in Pakistan and had attempted to fraudulently claim a massive payout.
So she's not dead, she was living in Hornchurch and still running the off-licence under the name Rosina Butt, but she was also Shamshad Bila.
By this stage, John had enough evidence of suspected criminal activity to report back to the 3 insurance companies, who then contacted the authorities. DCI Manley of the City of London Police worked on the case. In his eyes, the 2 identities were pivotal to the fraud.
At the time, Shamshat had 2 passports, one in her old identity that was legal, one in her new identity.
The second passport came into play after Shamshat Bila had supposedly died.
She's got to get back from Pakistan and she's used her new identity and a new passport to travel back to the UK. So a high degree of planning in how's she going to get out there, how's she going to get back.
With so much evidence, the police moved in to arrest the main suspects, Muhammad Ali Butt and Rosina Butt. But even then, there was a surprise in store.
When we executed warrants, the wife, Rosina, was upstairs and the door was answered by a man in police uniform. And between committing the fraud and working in the off licence, he had applied for and was joining the police force and was in police uniform on his way to work, maybe not realising the implications of what happened and what fraud had been committed.
In an audacious move, Muhammad Ali Butt had actually joined the police, the very organisation that, unbeknownst to him, was about to bring him down. But before the case could progress, DCI Manley needed a motive.
When we investigate it, we find actually that she has got quite a nice house, but she's in a lot of debt and she's struggling to pay the mortgage. So while she had a nice lifestyle, she was struggling to maintain it. So it looks to me as though the motive is to maintain a lifestyle.
By the time the case reached Southwark Crown Court, the evidence was compelling, especially the death certificate from Pakistan.
We've forensically examined it, and you've got Mohammed Butt and Rosina Butt. Her fingerprints are on the document. So the lady whose death has been faked has got her fingerprints on the document.
Not an easy thing to do if you're dead. The butt of the joke was that they were now worse off than when they started. Muhammad Ali Butt and Rosina Butt had tried to claim £2 million in life insurance, but failed, and collectively were locked up for 3 years, 7 months.
I've got no sympathy for them at all. I think they underestimated how far the insurance company would take it, and also I don't believe they ever thought the police force would take it up to investigate.
Instead of enjoying a life of luxury, the couple ended up living behind bars. Hardly what you call seventh heaven. DCI Manley has some words of warning for anyone else thinking of doing the same.
If you're planning to fake your own death, don't bother.
With 5.1 billion bus passenger journeys taken every year, statistically, there are going to be road accidents. Lee Ingram of First Group knows this only too well.
It's quite common that we get accidents at junctions. It's also quite common where one person gives one version of events and someone else has got a completely different version.
And that's just what happened in this case.
This is a case involving a vehicle pulling out of a junction in front of an oncoming bus. The van driver is saying that he's pulled out from the junction, got virtually all the way across and had to stop because of traffic. He stopped, he's alleging our bus is speeding, not been able to stop in time, which he should have done, and hit him in the rear.
Lee talked to the bus driver to get his side of the story.
Our bus driver is simply saying that the vehicle's pulled out as soon as it's upon him and left him no chance to avoid hitting him.
This immediately called the van driver's claim into question. Lee's suspicions were also aroused by the sheer size of the claim.
The gentleman was claiming for whiplash injuries to himself, also injuries to 3 passengers in the vehicle as well. So we're looking at a claim around about the £20,000 mark, including legal costs.
A huge amount of money was at stake, but luckily First Group buses are fitted with state-of-the-art technology, which monitors everything.
Our buses are effectively data-gathering machines. We've got CCTV evidence, we've got telematics evidence, we know where a bus is at any time, what speed it's doing, and we've also taken images of everything around and on the bus.
Checking out the CCTV was a no-brainer. It would settle the question of what's happened once and for all.
From the version of events given by the other party, we were expecting him to casually pull out of the junction, get virtually all the way across and then have to come to a slow stop, and then the bus coming along shortly after and hitting his stationary vehicle. When we've actually looked at the footage, this is not what's occurred. He's pulled out quite quickly from the junction across the bus who's almost upon him and just got past the front offside of the bus when it's collided with the rear of his van. This goes completely against what the claimant was actually saying had happened.
The CCTV proved the claimant hadn't been telling the truth about the accident.
I don't think this gentleman is actually deliberately trying to pull out in front of an oncoming bus. I think what he's done is he's misread the distance between himself and the bus. He's gone for it to all intents and purposes and just tried to get across the road before the bus got there and failed spectacularly. Why take the chance? Buses weigh 15 tonnes. If they hit you, you're going to know about it.
Not only did the claimant cause an accident by dangerous driving, he tried to blame someone else and sting them for a payout.
He's then decided, well, I'm going to try and make a claim. I'll put in a version of circumstance which I think is correct, and we'll go for it and see how much we can get out of it.
Needless to say, the claim was rejected, all thanks to the onboard technology.
For anyone who's thinking of trying to put in a fraudulent claim or an exaggerated claim, as soon as that comes into us, you're likely to receive a copy of the CCTV footage proving otherwise. So, yeah, if you're thinking about making something up, I wouldn't bother.
Insurance fraud in the UK has hit epidemic levels. It's costing us over £2 billion every year. That's almost £6 million every day. Deliberate crashes, bogus personal injuries, even phantom pets. The fraudsters are risking more and more to make a quick killing, and every year it's adding over £50 to your insurance bill. But insurers are fighting back, exposing 15 fake claims every hour. Armed with covert surveillance systems,
that's the subject out the vehicle,
sophisticated data analysis techniques, and a highly skilled, dedicated police unit.
Police, don't move, stay where you are!
They're catching the criminals red-handed.
Don't lie to us.
All those con men, scammers, and cheats on the fiddle are now caught in the act and claimed and shamed. Today, the jaw-dropping story of how far one man was prepared to go in order to defraud an insurance company.
In order for his biggest fraud to be successful, he's had to kill a man.
The solicitor who thought she was above the law but lost everything.
She's been struck off. All this just demonstrates was how greedy she was.
And IFED carry out raids in 20 different locations in their biggest operation this year.
My name's Amin Tyler, I'm a police officer. You just stop what you're doing, as in take your hands off the computer.
With millions of pounds lost every day in the UK through insurance fraud, there are many stories of people going to extraordinary lengths in order to make a claim. But in 2012, West Midlands Police dealt with a case of fraud which defied belief. Detective Inspector Warren Hines was the senior officer on the investigation.
On the morning of the 28th of November 2012, West Midlands Police were alerted that there was a body floating in the Swan Pool in Sandwell Valley Country Park, which is a large park just outside West Bromwich in Birmingham. The body appeared to be of a early middle-age Asian male, and he died as a result of a significant wound to his throat.
An autopsy revealed that this was anything but an accident. And so West Midlands Police found themselves dealing with a murder case. The first step was to identify the victim.
Jasbir Baines was a man who was born and brought up in the West Bromwich area, close to where he met his death. Fair to say he'd probably had a few ups and downs in his life, and sometime in 2006 he emigrated to Canada. Didn't return to England until the tail end of 2011. He'd always worked, but towards the end of his life, he was living a transient existence, really. He was of no fixed abode. He was dabbling in drugs, drinking too much. Basically, needed to get himself sorted out.
It's fair to say that Jasbir Singh had his problems, but that didn't explain why anyone would want to take his life.
There was one person that really was of interest to me, and that was a chap called Jamie Ray. What our investigations revealed was that in 2006, Jasbir, our victim, had borrowed £14,000 off Jamie Ray, who was a school friend. They'd grown up in the local area together. The intention was that that £14,000 debt would be paid back in the near future, but it wasn't. Jasbir emigrated to Canada to be with his family and never paid Jamie Ray any of the money back. Jamie Ray, towards the end of 2012 also, his own financial situation was rapidly deteriorating, and he was a man that needed some money.
With Ray in financial difficulty and still owed a lot of money by Jasbir, it was certainly possible that there could be some bad feelings. But what detectives discovered next turned Ray into a prime suspect.
Jamie Ray had assumed our victim's identity when he left for Canada. While he had assumed his identity, he perpetrated a number of frauds. One was a mortgage fraud which enabled him to buy a house in West Bromwich. But interestingly, he also took out a life insurance policy, which if it had paid out, would have benefited Jamie Ray's children to the sum of just under £320,000.
It was a chilling discovery. And with a fraudulent life insurance policy which paid out over £300,000 to Ray's children in the event of Jasbir's death, it's an understatement to say that the evidence was stacked against him.
Jamie Ray's a persistent fraudster, really. But most of his offending was fairly low level, really. This life insurance policy that he'd taken out really would have been the equivalent of a lottery win to him. It was in a completely different league. But it's fair to say, with that and the house that he'd purchased, and obviously, you know, the other policies of insurance that he'd taken out in relation to the house, had he been successful, he'd have benefited to just over £370,000. He would have been quite a wealthy man.
There was no disputing that Ray had a motive, and as West Midlands Police continued to investigate the case, everything pointed to Ray being the culprit of this despicable crime.
On the night of the 27th of November, Jamie Ray had CCTV cameras at the front and rear of his house. Now those would show who was coming and going from his address. And just after 6:30 in the evening, the camera on the front of the house gets turned away. Now that becomes important later because his assertion, once he was arrested, was that he was at home all night. He hadn't actually been out.
And when the police checked Ray's mobile phone records, it confirmed the police's suspicions.
Jamie Ray contacted Jasbir and lured him during the course of a couple of phone calls and a number of text messages to Sandwell Valley Country Park. The most logical route is down a one-way street and down a little alleyway. And the only conclusion you can draw from that is that Jasbir has been lured to this remote location by somebody that he knows and somebody that he thinks he can trust. That person was Jamie Ray.
With the evidence piling up against Ray, West Midlands Police were certain they had their man.
The evidence that we had was all circumstantial. However, when you take it all together, it presents a very, very compelling picture. The last phone call that ever was received by our victim was made by a telephone that Jamie Ray had sole control of. We had the debt from 2006. We had the mortgage fraud perpetrated in the victim's name, and also the big one was the life insurance policy. Jamie Ray stood to benefit to the tune of just under £320,000 in the advent of Jasbir's death. And that, to my mind, was a really powerful motive for murder.
Incredibly, greed had led a man to kill a childhood friend for the sake of a few £100,000. And in April 2012, Jamie Ray was arrested for fraud and the murder of Jasbir Singh.
Jamie Ray stood trial at the start of 2014 at Wolverhampton Crown Court. At the end of the trial, the presiding judge said just what a cold-hearted, callous and brutal killing this was. The sentence that Jamie Ray was given was life imprisonment, and the minimum term he would have to serve before being eligible for parole was 27 years. The judge also gave him 4.5 years to run alongside that life sentence for the Fraud Act offences. So a significant sentence, but one that's wholly right in the circumstances. I do feel quite satisfied that Jamie Ray is now going to be accountable for his actions and spend a lot of time in prison as a result. It's the right place for him to be.
It's hard to believe that a brutal murder could be connected with insurance fraud, But this case demonstrates the extreme lengths that some people are prepared to go to.
What sets Jamie Ray apart from your average fraudster is that he's sort of taken the next step up, if you like. In order for his biggest fraud to be successful, he's had to kill a man. That would take a certain amount of planning, wouldn't it? Clearly, he has planned the murder. Clearly, he had planned to claim on the life insurance policy. I guess at the time that he'd gone through with it all, he didn't expect to be stood at Wolverhampton Crown Court being sentenced to life imprisonment.
Although this is a very unusual case, Warren is keen to point out that any type of fraud can result in a brush with the law.
There's a bit of a myth generally amongst people who perpetrate fraud that the police aren't interested, that we, if anybody reports fraud to us, we sort of encourage them to go to the bank and report it there, and the bank will do their investigations. Nothing could be further from the truth. Fraud's a crime and the police are very interested in it.
Still to come, dodgy driving.
It's a very dangerous manoeuvre, and it's also not fair to then say that the bus has drifted into you.
And IFED get their hands on some high-octane evidence. Insurance fraud is nothing new, and is committed by people from all walks of life. However, there are some fraudsters who you really think would know better. Back in 2004, Allianz dealt with a case that ended up having lifelong consequences for the claimant, who, believe it or not, was a solicitor.
We received a claim from Mrs. Seepersand relating to an injury that she alleged that she sustained while slipping on a wet floor in a shopping mall. The injuries that she told us that she'd suffered were back injuries, and she was alleging that there were no signs warning people of a wet floor. But on investigation that we discovered, and we talked to a number of people who worked there and other witnesses, that they all saw the signs very clearly labelled to say that there was a wet floor there.
With any accident, it's not uncommon to have conflicting versions of events from the parties involved. But as someone in the legal profession, Mrs. Seepersand would have known that to back up her claim, what she really needed was an independent witness. So you'll never guess what happened next.
Initially, we resisted making any payment, but sometime down the line, we received an independent witness statement that Mrs. Seepersand had provided.
An account from an independent witness can often be the deciding factor in whether or not a claim is successful, and this case was no different.
The witness statement was made by a Mrs. Singh, and she would say in her statement that she was passing by and she saw the fall, and that she was absolutely certain that there was no signage in place. At that point, we settled the claim, and as far as we were concerned, the case was completed and we closed our file.
Now, so far, it all sounds routine. An accident, with an independent witness who steps forward, gives an honest account of what happened, which leads to the claim being paid. But this story has a rather interesting twist.
2 years later, we received a call from another insurer advising us that they'd received a claim, again from Mrs. Seepersand, and this related to a motor vehicle accident that she'd had with a parked car. The interesting aspect to this was the other party was none other than the independent witness that featured in the claim that she submitted against us 4 years previously.
Now there's a coincidence. They say lightning never strikes in the same place twice. Well, it did for Mrs. Seepersand. But Allianz weren't convinced.
The chances of the same individuals being involved in completely separate incidents, one being a sort of a slip and trip type accident, another one being a car accident, 5-6 years apart, it's beyond coincidence.
Smelling a rat, Allianz decided to do some digging around.
We were able to obtain references from employers and also gather some email evidence that clearly showed that these two individuals had been friends for a very, very long time.
Although they'd been found out, this pair of fraudster friends had stood to make a lot of money from their lies and deceit.
Had Mrs. Seepersand been successful in both attempts, she would have received around £35,000.
But for Mrs. Sipasand, being caught out was just the beginning of a downward spiral.
The police were very, very quick and very keen to take the case on, and it proceeded to court where Mrs. Sipasand and Mrs. Singh were both convicted of fraud-related offences. Mrs. Sipasand received a 12-month custodial sentence, which was suspended for 2 years. Mrs. Singh received 8 months for the first incident and another 12 months for the second, but this was also suspended for 2 years.
As a solicitor, Mrs. Sipasand was in the business of upholding the law, but having been found guilty of breaking it herself, the consequences were life-changing.
Mrs. Sipasand essentially lost everything. She's been struck off. She can no longer act as a solicitor. So was it really worth it?
As with so many other cases of insurance fraud, the motive behind Mrs. Sipasand's actions was nothing more than greed.
Had she just stuck with the first claim, that was paid, and she never would have hit the radars of the insurance companies. But the fact she then went on to commit a second fraud and worked with the same people, I think was her undoing. And to me, all this just demonstrates was how greedy she was.
People often think insurance fraud is easy to get away with, but this case illustrates this is far from the truth.
This is a really good example which demonstrates how insurance companies do talk to each other, especially around preventing fraud. We have our systems, we share information, we regularly liaise with each other. There's a lot more chance nowadays you'll get caught.
With the cost of insurance fraud escalating, the City of London Police joined the fight in January 2012, when they formed an elite squad known as the Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department.
I would say to anyone who's considering committing insurance fraud that now this is no longer a crime without consequence that it may have been in the past. There is a dedicated 40-strong unit known as IFED that work 24/7 hunting down insurance fraudsters.
IFED have made over 450 arrests and saved millions of pounds in fraudulent insurance claims, money which ultimately goes back into our pockets. From now on, fraudsters need to watch their backs.
So if you're thinking about it, I suggest think again. There's every chance you'll get an IFED detective come knocking on your front door.
It's early morning, and IFED are about to launch one of their biggest operations to date, with 20 warrants being executed in simultaneous raids across the country, as they attempt to bring down a suspected car insurance scam. Aman Taylor is in charge of one of the units.
The person we're looking at today is the Director and Chief Engineer of a vehicle assessor company. We're looking for forged documents that have been submitted as part of a claim to the insurance company relating to credit hire.
Because of the types of vehicles involved with this particular case, IFED are dealing with large sums of money.
Looking through the list of vehicles that we're looking at, quite a lot of them are high-end vehicles, BMWs, Mercedes. There's a couple of Porsches, Aston Martins, that sort of thing on the list. There are a couple of lower-end vehicles, but the majority of them are sort of higher-end, sort of what you class as like prestige cars, expensive cars, because they can claim a higher rate of credit hire and they can charge a lot more for the more expensive cars.
Carrying out multiple raids simultaneously requires a great deal of planning, resources and communication. But as Aman explains, the potential benefits far outweigh the difficulties of organising such a huge operation.
This morning it's all going to be planned around the same sort of time. We're going to be looking at going to the addresses at the same sort of time. From our point of view, it's the best way of doing it so that we can secure all the evidence that we can without allowing someone the chance to dispose of anything.
Having arrived at the location and liaised with the other units, it's time for the raids to begin. So Aman leads his team in.
Morning, my name's Amin Taylor. I'm a police officer from the City of London Police. We're looking for... Yeah? He's not here. Do you know where he is? Is he? Can I just for a minute, you just stop what you're doing, as in take your hands off the computer? We've got a warrant to search his premises, all right, in relation to an investigation into a credit hire company. So what we're going to do, we're going to have officers here that are going to search for some documents that they're looking for. That's covered under a warrant, and we'll give you a notice which explains the reasons why we're here and the powers that has been used to search for those documents. But I still need to speak to... Is he going to be out for the whole day, do you know? Yeah, okay, all right. Well, I'll cross that bridge when we come to it then. Have you got a contact number for him, a mobile number or something like that? Yeah, okay, all right. So what I ask you that you don't do for the time being is you don't make any phone calls or use the computers. We'll just leave them as they are for now.
The suspect that a man needs to speak to might not be here, but that doesn't mean IFED's work here is done. The team begins a systematic search of the office, looking for documentation and any other evidence that relates to this suspected fraud. Meanwhile, a man leaves to see if he can track down the suspect.
We're going to the home address now to try and see if our suspect is at the home address. So that is the next plan of attack, and then if he's not, what I'll look to do is I've got a phone number for him now, so I'll look to phone him, arrange for him to come to the address so that we can search, then take him to the police station. That's the plan. Is that end one?
A short drive later, and a man has arrived. But will he get his man this time?
Morning.
Yeah, but he's not here.
He's not here?
No.
I've got a warrant to search the premises.
The suspect isn't home, but as they're here, a man and his colleague give the house a quick sweep for anything which relates to the case.
He's shown us round, there's no office in there, so we don't need to search. So what I do now is I contact him, arrange for him to come to the police station so he can be interviewed. My name's Alan Taylor, I'm from the City of London Police. We've been to your business address, and I've just been to your home address. We need to speak to you regarding some assessments you've done on vehicles. Unfortunately, you're going to have to do it today, because today is the day we're doing it. We've got officers at your business address that are searching now and looking for some documentation relating to the investigation, so you are going to have to do it today.
The suspect has agreed to attend an interview at the police station later on. And word has come through from a man's team that the search at the office has gone well.
We're happy with how it's gone so far. We've got all the original documentation that we were looking for, and we've arranged for him to come in, so overall it's gone very well.
IFED has seized a number of documents and a PC tower from the office, which will be analysed by computer experts for any evidence relating to the case.
He knows that we're on to him, he knows that he's got to come in for an interview now. I've spoken with him, we've made the arrangement, so if he then breaks that arrangement, then we'll go to his home address and arrest him.
Still to come, IFED's investigation gets off the ground as they remove suspected evidence at another one of the raid locations.
Just recovered a Ferrari, which is worth in excess of £150,000.
You know how it is. You're in the car, you're running late, and you think you might just make it. And then you get stuck behind a bus. Impatiently, you go for the overtake, only to misjudge it and collide with the bus. Cars driving across and into buses, otherwise known as drifting, is something that bus operators like First Group see on a regular basis. And it's a far bigger problem than you might think.
These are claims where people will try to race across and get in front of the bus. They will often exceed the speed limit because the buses tend to be travelling at it, so they tend to try and get around the front. Often they can then find themselves with the traffic in front of them slowing down, so they then in turn have to slow down, and there will be collisions.
Drivers who do this are not only putting the safety of themselves at risk, but also the safety of other road users, including the bus and its passengers.
What they're actually doing is they're pulling across and reducing the braking distance of a bus, or sometimes they're pulling in far too sharply and actually striking the front of the bus with their own vehicles.
Of course, when manoeuvres like this go wrong, which they frequently do, more often than not, it's the bus driver who's accused of being at fault.
And then when they put their claim in, they're alleging that the bus has deviated from its current lane and swerved into the side or the back of the car.
A classic example of this happened in 2012, when an impatient motorist just couldn't wait to get past one of First Group's buses. Before the collision takes place, you can see the driver of the white car shaping up to go round the bus, even though there are double white lines on the road, which mean overtaking is not allowed. As the traffic gets moving again, the driver goes for the overtake. But what they didn't bank on was the island in the middle of the road. Unsurprisingly, the car doesn't make it through the gap and collides with the bus. It wasn't long before First Group heard from the driver's insurance company. And in his version of events, the bus had pulled into him and the bus driver was to blame. But of course, it isn't always just the damage to their vehicles that drivers will submit claims for.
We'll regularly see claims come in for incidents of this nature. There will invariably be a whiplash injury claim. You've got the damage to the vehicle, all through their own fault really, although they're obviously going to try and pin it on the bus company and claim their money back, and it's just not fair to do so.
Both occupants of the white car submitted personal injury claims, but thanks to the CCTV footage, the entire claim was rejected. But incidents like this are nothing new.
There's a number of types of ways that these people will try and cut in front of the buses. They'll either speed up and cut in front and then brake. Alternatively, they will just slowly drift over into the bus, actually colliding with it sometimes, or just very close and just missing the front of the bus. Either way, it's a very dangerous manoeuvre, and it's also not fair to then say that the bus has drifted into you, when we can often prove that's just not the case.
Some buses are equipped with as many as 16 CCTV cameras, covering every angle inside and outside the bus. The reason they're there is to ensure the safety of the driver and passengers. Although in the event of a collision, they can come in very handy when it comes to proving who's at fault.
I think these individuals tend to be someone who's come across a situation, put themselves in a situation, the vehicle's been damaged, they're not prepared to accept responsibility for themselves, so they're going to try and pin the blame on someone else. It's not always going to be possible for them to do that, and eventually we will find out if they're lying.
So, to anyone out there who thinks that a claim like this could be their ticket to some easy money, Lee has some words of advice.
I would suggest to drivers that are thinking of putting in these types of claims, be aware of your facts, because if you're saying that the bus has pulled into you, invariably the bus is in a bus lane, there's no reason for that bus to have moved, which is going to make us suspicious to begin with, and we've got CCTV, so we will find out what actually happened.
Today, IFED have carried out their biggest operation this year, with teams raiding 20 different locations as they attempt to bring down a suspected motor insurance scam.
We've got a warrant to search these premises, so for the time being, you don't make any phone calls or use the computers. We just leave them as they are for now.
After a slow start, a man Taylor managed to track down his suspect, who agreed to attend the police station for interviewing. A man's team also seized documents and computer equipment thought to be connected to the case.
He knows that we're on to him, he knows that he's got to come in for an interview now. I've spoken with him, we've made the arrangement, so if he then breaks that arrangement, then we'll go to his home address and arrest him.
But it isn't just paper and PCs that have been taken away today. Because at one of the other raid locations, the City of London Police are seizing something much more exciting.
We've just recovered a Ferrari, which is worth in excess of £150,000, which we believe may be evidence of money laundering. As with all acquisitive crime, obviously the assets, we are keen to get hold of those for any future confiscation or compensation proceedings.
It's early days in the investigation, but a boy's toy worth as much as this raises a lot of questions.
Clearly, a car of this value is quite unique, and therefore one could consider that if convicted, this could be the proceeds of crime and used to compensate victims and also be confiscated under the appropriate legislation. And no criminal should benefit, obviously, from their offending.
With £150,000 worth of supercars shackled onto the back of a low-loader, it hasn't been a good day for the Ferrari's owner. But IFED and the City of London Police are over the moon.
Yeah, very good day, I think. Yeah, I'm very pleased.
Insurance fraud in the UK has hit epidemic levels. It's costing us over £2 billion every year. That's almost £6 million every day. Deliberate crashes, bogus personal injuries, even phantom pets. The fraudsters are risking more and more to make a quick killing. And every year it's adding over £50 to your insurance bill. But insurers are fighting back, exposing 15 fake claims every hour. Armed with covert surveillance systems,
That's the subject out the vehicle.
sophisticated data analysis techniques, and a highly skilled, dedicated police unit. They're catching the criminals red-handed.
Just don't lie to us.
All those con men, scammers, and cheats on the fiddle are now caught in the act and claimed and shamed. Coming up, secret filming saves an insurance company from a fraudulent claim worth almost £2 million.
Instead of somebody who could not use their right arm, the footage shows somebody going about everyday life with absolutely no trouble.
A nasty collision between a pedestrian and a bus, but who was to blame?
If the driver's made eye contact and he's carried on, is he saying that he's deliberately run him over?
And IFED execute 20 warrants in their biggest operation this year.
You know him, don't you? I can tell by your answer you know him.
With many jobs, there's a risk of personal injury, although with some, the element of danger is far greater than others. Particularly professions which rely on manual labour, such as building or factory work. For people who do these sorts of jobs, a personal injury claim can be the saving grace in the event of an accident. But in 2010, Royal Sun Alliance dealt with a claim submitted by a young man, which showed that things aren't always as they appear.
Danny Wykes is a young man who was working as a floor layer, and with a colleague, he was unloading a mixer from a trailer. The mixer was rolling down the trailer, but his colleague lost control of it, and so it free fell effectively and struck him on the right hand. So he did sustain an injury to his right hand, but it was relatively minor. It was a soft tissue injury, and it was the type of injury you may expect to heal within, say, a year.
But this was a problem which didn't have any signs of going away.
He went on to develop a condition known as complex regional pain syndrome. That's where somebody has a relatively minor injury. The injury appears to have healed. There's no reason why they were continuing to experience pain, but they carry on having a lot of pain.
Complex regional pain syndrome is a serious condition which can be severely debilitating. And Danny Wykes' case was no different.
He claimed that he couldn't use his right hand at all. It hurt if somebody just touched it. If somebody brushed past it, he'd be in agony for days. He couldn't raise his hand to smoke a cigarette. He couldn't carry anything. It caused difficulty with sexual relationships and he had to adopt a certain position. He had difficulty driving his vehicle. He couldn't work. And he did say that he felt like at times it would be better to amputate it because it was so useless. He was effectively like somebody with one arm.
It was quite a claim, and one which raised concerns at Royal Sun Alliance's headquarters.
The claim was made to us, ultimately, as his insurers, and with his company and ourselves, we were very sympathetic and made some payments to him, and in fact, we're working with him on rehabilitation to get him back to work.
The lengths that Royal Sun Alliance had gone to in an effort to make life easier for Wykes weren't to be sniffed at.
They paid for adaptations to his car. They provided him with voice-activated software for his computer because he allegedly couldn't type using his right hand. Over the course of, say, the first 18 months, they will have spent tens of thousands of pounds trying to help him to reach a full recovery. By July 2011, he claimed that in fact he was getting worse rather than better, and that the pain was now spreading up his right arm into his shoulder, and he was also experiencing similar pain in his left arm.
As far-fetched as this injury from a single knock to the back of the hand sounds, specialist opinion confirmed that this could be a legitimate claim.
Medical experts, based primarily on his reported symptoms, came to the view that he was suffering from this condition, and so they backed his claim. Ultimately made a claim for £1.9 million of compensation. And this is based on his incapacity, his inability to work and his future earnings, plus a considerable amount of care that he would need in his life going forward.
At almost £2 million, the claim was effectively for a lifetime of compensation. But before they handed over any money, Royal Sun Alliance began having doubts.
There came a point when we began to get suspicious about the level of his incapacity, so we began to investigate the case and deployed some surveillance.
The footage captured by the surveillance unit painted a very different picture to the one that Danny Wykes had portrayed.
Instead of somebody who could not use their right arm and had trouble with their left arm, the footage shows somebody going about everyday life with absolutely no trouble. It shows him driving his car using both hands at the steering wheel, going to the supermarket with his girlfriend, selecting produce from the shelves, loading up the trolley. At one point he's seen to put his weight through his arms and sort of ride on the trolley. He carries the heavy shopping bags, he unloads bags from the car. He's seen throwing a ball to a dog, wheeling a wheelbarrow, and in particular in November 2011, which is the time that he was signing court documents saying that he was extremely disabled, the footage shows him at what appears to be a place of work carrying a folded up table in one hand and a double glazing unit in the other hand.
To say that the footage didn't help Danny Wykes' claim ranks as the understatement of the year.
We showed the footage to the medical experts, who then, as a result of that, changed their opinion and formed the view that Mr. Wykes was either grossly exaggerating the level of pain or indeed making it up.
With Wykes' claim seemingly in tatters, Royal Sun Alliance sent a copy of the video evidence to his legal team.
When his solicitors received the surveillance footage, they ceased to act for him. They weren't prepared to continue being his solicitors in light of what he was seen doing on the footage.
With no one to represent him, Danny Wykes withdrew his claim. But this story doesn't end there.
I would imagine that he may have thought that he would get to keep the money he'd already had and he would simply walk away. He was on a no-win, no-fee agreement with his solicitors, so he wasn't obliged to pay their costs because effectively he had not won his case.
By this stage, Danny Wykes had received interim payments totalling around £25,000. So if that was the end of it, he'd still have pocketed a tidy sum, but unfortunately for him, the case was far from over.
In a normal case like this, it wouldn't be unusual for the insurer just to cut their losses and walk away. But in RSA, we take a really dim view of people that try and defraud us, because ultimately it affects our honest customers. So we applied to the court for him to be dealt with for contempt of court.
Danny Wykes had gone from claimant to defendant. But even when it came to his defence for disrupting the course of justice, his version of events raised a few eyebrows.
He initially claimed that he wasn't guilty, and in fact, he had lacked the mental capacity to bring the civil claim in the first place, and somebody else should have been acting for him, therefore he shouldn't be held accountable. The court gave him permission to obtain a report from a psychiatrist to say whether this was the case or not, and the psychiatrist concluded that he did have the mental capacity, so that defence fell away. And he then went on to allege that he hadn't read the court documents and he wasn't actually aware that he was trying to claim £2 million. So he tried various defences to get away with it.
After over a year of trying different tactics to absolve himself of any blame, and at a cost of £12,000 in legal aid, Danny Wykes finally appeared in court.
On the first day of trial, he admitted that he was guilty of contempt of court. He said that whilst he had sustained an injury to start with, and when he saw his first medical expert in September 2010, he was entirely truthful. He then started to get better, but he didn't tell anybody that he was getting better. And he admitted that he had signed documents that he knew were false and that he knew that would interfere with the course of justice. As a result, he was found guilty of contempt of court and he was sentenced to prison for 6 months and ordered to pay RSA's costs of the proceedings.
Danny Wykes had stretched the truth, but was now faced with a 6-month stretch behind bars. And his story is a stark reminder that when it comes to fraud, insurance companies are no longer easy targets.
People probably think that there's nothing to lose and everything to gain by trying to get maximum damages. However, there is obviously, as this case shows, everything to lose because Mr. Wykes has lost his liberty.
Still to come, IFED discover what could be promising leads as a nationwide operation is carried out.
We are finding stuff going all the way back to 2010, right the way up to present date.
Road traffic accidents can be a nasty business. They often happen in a split second, and if there's no eyewitnesses, then determining who's at fault is inevitably one man's word against another. This is exactly the situation that bus operator First Group found themselves in back in 2012, when one of their vehicles was involved in a gruesome incident.
This case involved a gentleman who stepped out in front of a bus on a busy high street. The driver's reported that he's had a fairly nasty collision with an individual who's been thrown to the floor. He's sustained some quite serious injuries.
And serious they were. In fact, the pedestrian was lucky that they weren't fatal.
It's caused fractures to his left hip, fractures to his left thigh. It's quite a big bone, the thigh bone. It's quite hard to break. So that in itself is a nasty injury. He's also got some severe bruising and he's got some facial injuries as well from where he's struck the side of the bus.
The man was hospitalised for 2 weeks, but it wasn't long before First Group received a claim from him for compensation. Although his account of how the accident unfolded placed the blame solely at the feet of the driver.
The pedestrian has told us that he is standing behind a group of people. He's looked to the left and to the right. He's seen the bus driver gesticulate towards the rest of the pedestrians to cross the road, and he himself has made eye contact with the bus driver and then stepped out, and the bus has subsequently just driven into him. All told, we're probably looking at around about £50,000.
There was no disputing that this was a horrendous accident, and with a version of events as damning as that, First Group immediately launched an investigation.
The first thing we're going to do is investigate fully, but on top of the compensation, we're also faced with the situation that he's laying some pretty severe allegations against our driver, so of course we want to look at the CCTV footage and interview as many witnesses as we can.
Buses are equipped with as many as 16 CCTV cameras, covering virtually every angle inside and outside the bus. So if the pedestrian's claims were true, then First Group would be hard-pressed to argue otherwise.
The key thing to remember in the third party's version of events is that he makes it quite clear that the driver gesticulates towards the pedestrians and that he himself has made actual eye contact with the driver, yet the bus still didn't stop. These are quite severe allegations we're making against one of our drivers. I mean, if the driver's made eye contact and he's carried on, is he saying that he's deliberately run him over? Highly unusual, and I'm not buying that for a second.
There was only one way to find out what really happened. Unfortunately for First Group, they had the entire sequence of events on camera.
This CCTV footage was very important because it revealed that the statement made by the injured pedestrian was total fabrication. It didn't happen. The best camera view is the camera from the near side looking towards the front of the bus, which clearly shows the pedestrian walking along the path, and for absolutely no reason at all, with no real warning, he just turns right and steps into the path of the bus. The camera in the driver's cab, it shows that there were no gesticulations from the driver.
With evidence as clear as this, the pedestrian's case wasn't exactly what you'd call rock solid.
I would say this whole claim hinges on the fact that this gentleman has said that the driver has waved him across, made eye contact with him, he's assumed it's safe to cross, and the bus has then driven into him. We know that just did not happen.
Just to be sure, let's take another look. As the bus approaches, we can clearly see that the man is walking along the road and is not waiting to cross. Meanwhile, in the cab, at no point does the driver raise his hand to wave the man over. When the pedestrian steps out into the road, it's only when the bus is inches from his face that he turns to see whether it's safe to cross.
It felt very good to actually be able to throw this claim out because we could prove that this chap was just not telling the truth. We don't like people who don't tell the truth. It makes our job harder.
There is a valuable lesson to be learned from this case, and that's to be honest about where the blame really lies before submitting a claim. Because if you're the one who's at fault, then the chances are you don't have a leg to stand on.
I think that despite the fact that he suffered some very severe injuries, I think it's actually disgraceful that he's deliberately tried to mislead us just so that he can get a payout on his injuries. And no one's denying the fact that they were severe, but you can't just expect someone else to pay out because you've not looked properly when you've crossed the road.
In January 2012, the police joined the fight against insurance fraud by forming an elite squad known as IFED, the Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department.
IFED is a dedicated team that deals with insurance fraud. Whatever insurance policy there is out there, we investigate it.
There is a dedicated 40-strong unit that work 24/7 hunting down insurance fraudsters.
IFED has made over 450 arrests and saved millions of pounds in fraudulent insurance claims, money which ultimately goes back in our pockets. From now on, fraudsters need to watch their backs.
We are out there in numbers. You might get a nasty knock on your door in the morning if you commit this type of fraud.
Police, don't move, stay where you are!
It's 5:50 a.m. and today IFED are carrying out a major nationwide sting involving over 100 police officers across the country. Today's operation is targeting suspected fraudsters who make fake insurance claims for courtesy cars provided to motorists while their vehicles are being fixed. With 20 warrants being simultaneously executed across the UK, this is IFED's largest operation this year. DC Jamie Kirk and DS Marcus Allen are heading up one of the many units.
Today is massive because warrants will be executed at home addresses where we hope to arrest the suspects and then move on to business addresses to seize items which will show the level of criminality of those involved.
The first stop for Marcus and Jamie is what's believed to be the home address of the prime suspect.
Good morning. Morning. We're officers from the City of London Police.
We've got a warrant to come into the premises, so we need to come in.
We'll explain what's happening to you.
But once inside, the team hit a bit of a dead end.
We've got a warrant to search his premises. It's in relation to a chap called... You know him, don't you? I can tell by your answer you know him.
It turns out that although this house belongs to the suspect, the family living here are actually tenants and are nothing to do with the investigation. But that doesn't mean they can't be of assistance.
Do you have a contact number for him? Yeah. OK, can we have that?
They might not have got their man yet, but Marcus and Jamie have been given contact numbers for both the suspect and his family.
Right, we have a warrant here. That warrant has been signed by a judge, and that gives us the authority to search his house. There's no sign of the offences we've investigated, no evidence for that. So what we need to do now is contact him. We've got officers at the business address, so if he turns up there to get rid of any evidence, he'll be intercepted, arrested, and a warrant will be done there.
Although the team now have phone numbers for the suspect and his family, as yet they haven't been able to get hold of either of them.
We're going to the business premises where we will wait for office hours and hopefully staff or our suspect will turn up. We will we'll arrest the suspect if he turns up. If staff turn up there, we'll execute the warrant and search the premises for evidence. Through here, then a right at the end.
It's still only 8 a.m, so it's a waiting game for the team as they stake out the offices. But while they're lying in wait, the suspect's family returns their phone call.
My name's Jamie Kirk. I'm a detective with the City of London Police. I came to your brother's property this morning because I need to speak to him. I need to speak to you in relation to some matters. Where's your brother then? Where is he? It must be somewhere. It's gone back home. But where's back home?
It sounds as though the main suspect may be overseas, but his family has given them an address which they didn't know was connected to the case. So Jamie and Marcus are going to leave another team to stake out the office while they chase up this unexpected lead.
Yeah. Right, I don't think we should rest on our laurels. Let's just get round number one. Yeah. Right, shall we go?
Let's go in, yeah. DC Kirk from the City of London Police, just spoke to you on the phone. I need to come in and talk to you.
The cameras remain outside, but the investigation is progressing well.
The business premises for which we have a warrant, there is activity there, so officers have gone through the door at the business premises. They'll secure that, we'll start a search. Hopefully the suspect may even turn up there. In the meantime, we're doing a comprehensive search of the premises here. We've already found some documentation that may be linked to the offence. We found cash in one of the vehicles outside the address and also some money secreted in one of the bedrooms. The person arrested, the brother of the main suspect, has been taken away now. He'll be held at the police station and we'll question him in due course.
IFED have managed to confirm that their main suspect is abroad, so they'll have to wait to get their hands on him. But all is not lost, as another family member, who is also believed to be involved, has been arrested and taken to the local police station for questioning.
We are finding stuff going all the way back to 2010, right the way up to present date. It's around about £90,000 we've managed to identify so far. Just from looking at documentation here, I would imagine that our financial investigators are going to find substantially more than that.
With everything at the house done and dusted, Marcus and Jamie head to the business premises, where they soon discovered documents of interest.
We found documentation that supports the allegations of defrauding the insurance companies. This is the specific claims where we know that the fraud's been made in these names. So if we can get the original paperwork for that, that's great.
It's been a long day with many twists and turns, but Marcus and Jamie are delighted with the way things have gone.
The original was 26 claims and we were looking at around £90,000. I think we're in excess of that. So with everything else today, it's a great job, really.
As successful as today has been, there's a final loose end to be tied, or more likely, collared and cuffed.
Yeah, it's been a great day, successful, achieved everything. Just one thing we need to do now is to arrest the main suspect. Just got some information in that he's flying into the country on Monday. We need to get him early as possible so he doesn't have a chance to speak to others and to maybe destroy evidence. Therefore, I will be there and we will be the welcoming committee when he steps off the plane.
A total of 17 people were arrested across the country as part of IFED's nationwide operation into credit hire fraud. As any animal lover will tell you, getting a pet can be an exciting time. But for breeders, handing over a young puppy or kitten to a new family can be a precarious business, as there's no way of knowing whether there will be any problems with the animal's health. Thankfully, many pet insurers provide breeders with a short-term period of cover.
There's a facility that insurance companies offer breeders when they're selling new puppies and kittens, and that's to put a temporary period of insurance on the puppy or kitten that allows the new owner the ability to take the puppy or kitten to the vet at the earliest sign they suspect a problem. Because most of the breeders are breeding pedigree animals, because there's a purchase price involved, there is the ability, if the animal does sadly die, to claim for the purchase price. So it protects the new owner, ensures the puppy has the best care, and it also, to a certain extent, protects the breeder.
But for unscrupulous scammers, even a short-term insurance policy like this can be used as a means to cash in. which is something that Agria Pet Insurance discovered in 2012.
The breed was a pug, young puppy. So sold at the end of December in 2012, and a few days later it was presented to a vet with acute respiratory problems. Not unusual for a pug puppy. The puppy was seen by the policyholder's vet and then seen again by the breeder's vet and sadly euthanized.
Losing a pet is never easy, but in this case it was particularly painful because pedigree pugs don't come cheap.
Normally pug puppies will be sold maybe between £800 and £1,500, and the purchase price that the policyholder was claiming for in this instance was about £1,500.
It was a hefty loss, but it wasn't just the new owners who were out of pocket.
Our suspicions were that the breeder had a litter of puppies, maybe one or two in the litter. The breed also have usually caesarean sections, so there would have been investment by the breeder just to have the puppies born. So the breeder had money on the table, and if one puppy wasn't saleable because it wasn't well, he was going to lose some investment.
Fortunately, the policy that was in place would cover the financial loss. But as Agria began to process the claim, they noticed something rather unusual.
Our suspicions were alerted with this case because the policyholder and the breeder had the same surname. In itself, that's not a fraud indicator. However, when the claim form was submitted, a letter came in stating categorically that the breeder and the policyholder, although they shared the same surname, weren't related. That's quite important because with this type of policy, if the breeder has sold the puppy to a new owner and issued the insurance, and that new owner is a member of the family, the insurance will be invalid.
Unsurprisingly, Agria began to investigate the legitimacy of the claim.
So we approached the owner and the breeder to just determine they weren't in fact related. We asked them the question, and they denied that they were related, but then they became very evasive, and trying to get hold of them became very difficult.
And as it turned out, there was good reason as to why the owner and the breeder weren't responding to the insurance company's calls.
When we started to probe, when we started to look at the veterinary records, and the vet categorically had got the owner and the breeder down as brothers. When we looked at Facebook and social media, it was very evident that the two were related, and the policy was invalid.
Thankfully, a fraudulent claim had been avoided. But this is typical of the kind of underhanded activity that companies like Agria need to be on their guard against.
I think in this instance, it was an opportunistic claim. I think breeders think that insurance companies are remote and distant, and with the volume of claims that certainly go through with pet insurance, this one will probably slip under the radar. No, it's not sophisticated fraud. It's very opportunistic fraud. It's often not thought through at all. For the individuals who think they can get away with this, we're looking for them.